Hey, Scott, how are you?
Hey, Rock, I'm doing fine. How you doing this morning?
Well, I said the third time hopefully is a charm because we've tried you before and we had nothing but problems. So I think we're good today.
All right. That sounds great.
So, Scott, I got Coach Medicis, the big Buffalo Bills fan, in here today, too, and we were talking a little bit before you came on the air here just a little bit ago. I want to get your thoughts on the coordinators because we were talking about Coach Dable and obviously Leslie Frazier, and I said, did Coach Dable's stock kind of go down a little bit this season compared to last year?
I guess a little bit. Yeah, I don't see either he nor Frazier's name yet come up prominently for some of the openings. Now there's a potential for more coaching openings. Tomorrow, Black Monday usually.
Yep.
So maybe they'll wait till Tuesday because whatever. But it's probably gone down a little bit because there's been some struggles by Josh Allen and the failure until recently to really get the run game going, which is a necessity for a cold weather team like Buffalo or New England or whatever. I think those are some negatives. But that being said, it was unlikely that this team was going to score more than 500 points like it did last year. It's played a tougher schedule this year, much tougher than the year before, and you got fans back in the stands, so when you go on the road and whatever, there's more potential for communication problems because of crowd noise and that sort of thing. So I don't think it's gone down terribly. I still think that overall, he's one of the better coordinators, and I think you got to give him credit that for Josh Allen's development, I think he's played a big role in that. To bring him along as a quarterback. Is there more work still to be done? Sure. I mean, last week was not a good passing performance by any means by Josh, and there's been some consistency issues here and stuff like that. But I still think he's fairly well regarded, and he's got a pretty good coaching pedigree, going back to Alabama championship and going back to the Patriots.
And, Scott, I think the other thing, too, the Bills and Coach Medicis hinted on this a little bit earlier is, Josh has been sacked 26 times, this season, and, that's a lot. And a lot of that has been 15 interceptions on his end. What do they got to do up front? Because if this team can get more physical up front, they're offensively. And I had to tell Coach Medicis this. I was really surprised. I had to go back into the stats here. And the Bills are still a top 10 offense in the league, but they got to get better up front, right?
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that. I think one of the big problems this year has been that you very rarely have you had the same offensive line unit in there. They've had some issues going along, but I think we saw last week this might be the best combination. Like Ryan Bates has been a very valuable guy for them. He was a guy that they had signed primarily to be kind of this swing guy. He could fill in at center and fill in at the other positions as well. Well, they got to a point where they weren't getting the production they needed, and so it was time to put him in. Put your best 5 guys out there. Now, Dawkins, I believe, isn't going to play today, and but I think going into the playoffs, I think this is going to be your best bet. I think they're going to be more stable, more solid there, and Josh has not been sacked, hasn't been sacked and hasn't faced a lot of pressures in the last 2 games or whatever. I think the mistakes that he made last week were more unforced errors when he had he just was not, for whatever reason, bad technique or whatever. I mean, he had the 3 interceptions and 4 passes, but wound up grinding it out, with Devin Singletary and also with Josh, who is still their biggest, run threat and so forth. So I think they may have finally found, after all this experimentation and injury issues and COVID issues, I think they finally found the proper starting 5 they're going to need going into the playoffs. Now, Bates had he tweaked his knee a little bit. I think, I still think he'll play today or whatever. And again, Dawkins, I think, is going to be out. But if this were, a must-win situation, I think he would be playing today.
And, Scott, if you flip to the other side of the ball, Leslie Frazier's done a really good job this year with that defense. They're number one defense in the league and number one against the pass and top 20 against the rush. What's attributed to his success this year with that defense?
Well, I think you've seen some young players have really started to develop, and we fixate about rookies and what impact rookies might have. And early on, a guy like Greg Rousseau clearly had an impact. But I look at guys like Ed Oliver. I think has really finally started to develop and play to the level that they were expecting when they took him in the first round, 3 years ago. So I think that's part of, I think, sometimes the impact is going to come from those guys like 2 or 3 years down the road. Again, we always expect an immediate impact, particularly for a guy who's taken as a, who has the ability to pressure the quarterback and so forth. So when I look at, somebody like that, I think that helps out. There's still, and I think the other thing you've got to remember with Frazier is that the Bills have played 6 games without their best defensive player in Tre'Davious White. You've got like a stellar top 5, top 10 cornerback, shutdown cornerback who you've been without, and yet they haven't missed a beat. With Levi Wallace and some other stuff. So I just think that and Frazier has been in this system now for several years, and he's got a great safety tandem that kind of serves as as the quarterbacks of your defense. And so I think that helps out as well to have a kind of a veteran unit. And we're also seeing guys like Tremaine Edmonds, who I think he's had some up and down moments. Like last week, I think he was a little sketchy in his play, but I think he's really coming along. And let's not forget, Rock, the guy's still only 23 years old.
Exactly. Yep.
He was the youngest player to play in the NFL in the modern era. Coming out as a 20-year-old from Virginia Tech, 4 years ago and stuff. So it's mind-boggling to think. So this, the upside for him, you've got to expect is still very high for him. I mean, he hasn't hit his prime yet, physically and mentally. So, it's a good unit overall. I think they've gotten more. I think that they pressured the quarterback more. They've got into this rotation and stuff, and that was something that they needed to do. They were talking about how do we match up with Kansas City? We need to pressure the quarterback, and we saw in that Kansas City game earlier in the season, they were able to do that. To get some better play, and I think I think that Harrison Phillips has really played exceptionally well, and he's another fourth year guy. So they're getting some better play from the interior of the line, which obviously always helps.
Hey, Scott, it's Medicis here. I was just going to say something about Harrison Phillips. It's kind of funny you brought that up, but what's Star Lotulelei's status going forward? Because he's kind of been out. He's had some personal issues. He sat out last year for COVID, and that was kind of everyone's excuse about the run defense last year was, we're missing Star. He's going to kind of fill that void, and he's been kind of hit or miss. He's been there. He's playing. He's not playing. He hasn't really played much recently, and like you said, Ed Oliver's had a nice breakout. Harrison Phillips has really broken out this year. Where does Star kind of fit in, as we make this playoff push?
Well, it's a great question, and that was the big thing when he opted out because of COVID last year, and this was one of the Achilles heels of this team was the inability to stop the run, and it's bitten them a couple of times, obviously, in the Tennessee and Indianapolis games. Those come to mind. I don't know. He's a guy who's he's in his 8th season. He's 32 years old, and you wonder, has he lost a step or two here? I don't. The coaching staff, Sean McDermott he doesn't usually publicly ridicule players or criticize players. He's pretty close to the vest and dances around any specific questions there. But my sense is that he hasn't been pleased with, the lack of availability of Starr, and so they've kind of moved on a little bit. And I think that some other guys, we mentioned about Phillips. I think some of the other guys have kind of taken up that slack and stepped into that role, and Ed Oliver and Obata, who I don't believe is going to play today or whatever. So you've got some of the young guys, I think, that have kind of filled that void, and so they're kind of moved on. And we get to this point, they've played a rotational series where they've rotated quite a few defensive linemen in there, but I think they're settling more as we get, here at the end of the season and the beginning of the playoffs. I think they're going to go a little bit more set with certain guys, and the train may have passed, for Starr. We'll see. This is going to be big for him. I mean, if you're, he needs to step up now as far as his future is concerned with this team, and this will be a great time to do it.
I was just going to say, are they going to go with that deep defensive line rotation with Obata, Epinesa? I mean, where are they going to go? Because if you look at the games they've lost, it's been teams that can control the football, run the ball against you, and then get a lead on Buffalo. And again, the Bills are really one-dimensional to begin with, but if you get a lead on them, they're going to pass every down. So was the defensive line rotation that, early on they were playing, 8, 9 defensive linemen a game, and that's kind of, again, with Starr not playing and Obata not playing, is that kind of what they're settling into? Because, again, they're one of the only teams that's sitting at nickel all game and only play 2 linebackers, and that's, again, been one of the criticisms of why they give up so many yards running the ball.
Yeah, I think they are going to settle in with some of the bigger guys, and this would be a great time for Starr to come through for them because, I think teams are going to try to run the football on the Bills, particularly the AFC teams. When you look, who they will be facing, there's a good chance that the Bills next week could be hosting the New England Patriots. And let's face it, Mac Jones is not going to come out there. The strategy is not going to be with Belichick for Mac Jones to be throwing, 40 passes. They're going to try to run the football again. And the same thing goes for, other teams that they're going to meet. Obviously, top seed Tennessee, and if you play Indianapolis again, Indianapolis really, totally destroyed them. And Tennessee, with Derrick Henry back, they're going to run the football again. They're going to keep being who they are. So it's going to be important for the Bills. But I'm upbeat on the Bills because I'm very, very high on Josh Allen, and I think that he can overcome some of that other stuff. He obviously has to throw the ball better than he did last week, and that was an anomaly as far as I'm concerned. If he were to struggle again against the Jets, then you got to be very concerned. So yeah, particularly for AFC, with the exception of Cincinnati, teams are probably going to try to run on you, and they could run with Mixon, but they've got a great young quarterback in Burrow that I think they're going to really try to exploit the Bills' weaknesses, particularly at cornerback, without Trey White being in there. So yeah, it's going to be intriguing to see, and again, it's Josh is putting points on the board. He can take teams out of that, run first. If they're playing from behind, they're going to have to abandon that and become something that they're not. In the case of the Patriots and some other teams where, they're not going to win throwing the football.
Scott, I don't know what's more exciting to see, Coach Medicis, a basketball coach, talking football, or see how excited he gets to talk about his Bills.
Well, there's some similarities, right, in defense and offensive sets and things like that.
Scott, I'm a Michigan guy. I got to ask you one last question. All these rumors of Jim Harbaugh possibly to the Raiders or the Bears, and then possibly if Joe Judge is out in New York, do you think he leaves Michigan, or is he just using this to kind of negotiate a bigger deal?
I think where there's smoke, there's fire. I think it could be, he may have come to a realization that how far can I go? Can I ever really beat, the SEC? Can I beat the big dragons, particularly Alabama or Georgia or whatever? Or is this as far as I can take it, with a Big Ten team? So I think that there might be some truth to it. I don't really think that he's the type of guy who's really going for the money. I mean, I give him credit because he did donate.
Yeah, $2 million.
His bonus money, right?
Yep.
So I don't think he's motivated by that, but I think he's a realist, and he's a very, very good football coach. There's no question about it. And I know he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way or whatever, but it would be hard for him, maybe looking at situations and say like, yeah, I think I might be able to win it all, depending where I'm going. Now the Giants are a mess.
Yeah.
But they're the Giants, right? And if he were able to get a situation where he is the controlling guy, which I think the Giants are going to have to do, I mean, to get somebody like that, they're going to go in with their big demand isn't going to be necessarily the money; it's going to be the control. And are the Maras willing to turn that over? Let Harbaugh get his own personal GM, even though Harbaugh will be like Belichick and the others, be the true GM, of the team and so forth. So I think that it bears watching, to see if he feels like I'm going to be a realist here. I can't get over the hump here, at Michigan, even though I'm a Michigan guy or whatever, or I see a greener pasture to a Super Bowl championship, which he almost had, obviously, in San Francisco, rather. So we'll see. I do think that there's some legitimacy to it, and I don't think he's just doing this to, get some monster contract. I really think that there's, he wants to win. He wants to win it all.
Well, Scott, I'll put you on the spot for Monday night's national championship game. Who do you like, Alabama or Georgia?
Probably Alabama. As much as I hate to see it, and I'm getting kind of tired of Alabama, and I'm getting kind of tired of the SEC, and I think it's a problem for college football, to be honest with you. And I don't know how it's going to ever be resolved or whatever. They just are so dominant, and I don't know how other programs are really going to match up. As long as Saban is there. So I think Alabama is the smart way to go. But I would like to see Georgia. I think it's a heck of a story with their quarterback, a walk-on. I think it's a great, great story. That would be a storybook ending for sure, but I don't see it happening.
Well, Scott, I'm glad we were able to make it happen today, and as I always tell you, thanks for coming on. Next time we'll have to talk some Syracuse hoops and football, so stay tuned.
All right, sounds great. It's always great being with you guys, and like I say, I love being back in Rome on the airwaves.
Thanks, Scott. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay. Take care, guys.
You too. Bye.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point he made on Harbaugh. I mean, if you're going to explore it, but I think he's right, though. I don't think it is about the money. But I also understand that
pay cut, then he donates the bonus. I mean,
I'm not the 12th best coach in the Big Ten.
Yes, and he